Hello and welcome to the Deep Sea Podcast, Pressurized, a short, punchy version of our main feed that gets right to the scientific point. If you like what you hear and you'd like to hear the full episode, you can find it in the same feed. And now, to get right to the point.
Who's this week's guest then, Tom?
For this week's guest, Mesophotic Reefs. So it's a bit on the shallow side for us, but it does cross into official deep sea-ness. But I think there's a lot of interesting parallels because it has that same sort of overlooked, undersampled, deeper than the lovely fluffy corally reef where you can scuba dive and collect things, which is really well studied. But then once you're going deeper, people just decide to go really deep. Nobody's doing this little fringe between the shallow and deep, because as soon as you've got something like rated to 3,000 meters, you go to 2,000 and 3,000 meters. There's not that much off the shelf stuff that encourages this area. So it's kind of getting overlooked. It's an area that Kai T of Kai the Fish Guy fame has started working in, and he was on the vessel with me in Norfolk Island. So we got chatting about it, and I was staggered at the reach of this research, and it sort of cross-cuts the aquarium trade and fish collecting and lots of really, really weird little tangents. So enjoy the rambling narrative as we explore Mesophotic reefs. I have been reunited with Dr. Kai T, a taxonomist and systematic ichthyologist, means a fish person, same as me, affiliated with the University of Sydney and the Australian Museum Research Institute, and we got to hang around on a tiny boat for a while.
Hello, Tom. It's been nice hanging out with you on Norfolk Island in a tiny boat.
You did make some demands, though, so I'm not even a gin drinker, but I have a gin.
Oh.
Cheers, sir.
I do have my gin. Cheers.
You are a curator of the beautiful things. You certainly have favorite fishes and take some absolutely amazing shots. Actually, I should include that in the intro. You are known online as Kai the Fish Guy.
On Twitter and Bluesky, and also on Instagram.
We'll put them into the show notes, but really, really beautiful photography of some beautiful reefy fishes. You know, all that gaudy, colorful stuff that doesn't interest us who like brown and gray things from the deep sea.
I've been told on many occasions, actually, that I'm a bit of a fish snob, which I have to say.
I saw it in action.
Well... Things that live in coral reefs are really beautiful.
It blows your calibration. Like, your standards are so much higher than the rest of us.
Well, yes. But also, I am proud to say that the last 3 papers that I've written, they're all of brown and yellow fishes. So they have less than 3 colors.
Well done. Well done. So recently you've been heading a little bit deeper, and that was an area I really wanted to chat to you about. You've started mesophotic sampling?
Yeah, so my interest in mesophotic reefs it's been a slow burn. It's not something that I started my research career or interest in immediately. I'm really interested in biodiversity and taxonomy and also descriptions and the systematics of coral reef species. Inadvertently, I've ended up kind of working in the realm of mesophotic coral reef species just because a lot of the undescribed biodiversity happens to be concentrated there. In the recent maybe 3 or 4 years, I've focused my efforts in trying to better understand mesophotic coral reef biodiversity, particularly in Australia, and kind of reaching out to lots of people that have pioneered and trailblazed this corner of coral reef science and try and get that collaborative networking going on here.
For anyone who's new to this term, we're starting to lose the light. We're going into the deeper areas of coral reefs. And we've quite often thought of the coral reef as sort of a little bit of a cap on the top. And because it goes beyond diving or easy diving, we kind of forget that actually there's layers and structure, and the coral reefs are actually much deeper than we give them credit for. So whereabouts are you, and what changes as you go deeper in these reefs?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, like you said, a lot of people kind of have this idea that coral reefs are just bustling shallow water paradise that happens in the snorkely bits that you go on your holidays for. And they are true. You know, most of what we know of coral reefs happen in that 0 to 10, 20 meter range. I'm more interested in the biodiversity of mesophotic coral reefs, which begins somewhere around 30 meters and they extend down to about 150, 200 meters. If you literally translate it, it means middle light, sometimes also known as a twilight zone. It's where light is very attenuated and very diminished, but not entirely absent. So you still have a bit of photosynthetic organisms growing there. You have a lot of crustose coralline algae, especially in parts of the reefs where the water is really clear. You can still see helimeter algae growing close to 100 meters. And you get a lot less reef-building stony corals, and you get a lot more encrusting sponges and non-photosynthetic corals, and lots of the calcium carbonate matrix of reefs that have, died off in the past, forming the vast structure of it. And the fish community here is quite remarkably different as well. Yeah, you do get species that live in shallow waters kind of entering the mesophotic realm, but you do have quite a niche assemblage of fishes that are found in all the depth strata. And because of where it's situated, it's, a little bit too deep for conventional scuba diving, but it's also too shallow for trawling and extractive methods. And also because it's so complex, it's really hard to get a beam throw down there. It kind of sits in this weird, awkward zone where it's just really hard to get to.
It's not necessarily more biodiverse, it's just a bit we've missed. Awkward middle ground we haven't studied here.
Yes, a lot of the new species that we're discovering now, they're really just endemic to that narrow band of coral reef habitat between the kind of 30 to 150 or so meters. And so if you're one of those few people in the world rebreather diving, entering the mesophotic realm and looking at the fish that live there, it's an amazing thing. And so I'm working with a lot of these people that do that, and also with a lot of ROV and BRUF data just to kind of get an idea of what lives down there.
How can you characterize the sort of flavor of these? Are they shallow species that are radiated down? Are the things coming up from below? Where do they hail from?
A lot of the families are families that we recognize. I think by far the serranids, labrids, pomacentrids, your damsels and your angels and your butterflies, your wrasses, all the things that we come to know and love from shallow water coral reefs, they're down there too. But the species are different. You get a lot of species that are really endemic to this deeper part of the reef. And so you don't see them in shallow water reefs. So you know that it's a wrasse, but it's just not a species or even a genus that you might be familiar with. So there are elements of similarity and familiarity, but then there's also, and the excitement comes from just looking at something and just going, oh my God, that is something that I've not seen before, snorkeling or diving. And then you also have your pelagics, like your carangids and your tunas and, some of these other more generalist species that just kind of go up and down the depth strata regardless of kind of habitat constraint. You're walking that really narrow tightrope of new and something that's kind of completely unknown. And, I want to reiterate that deep is a really relative term, right? Like for someone that studies coral reefs, the mesophotic coral reefs are quite deep. But for someone who studies hadal fishes, like yourself, you're probably laughing at 150 meters.
We've got the sort of vertical endemic structure. What's it like laterally? Is this island biology, or are you finding sort of the same species on different chains?
That really depends on the kind of habitat we're talking about. Most of the mesophotic reefs that I've been fortunate enough to study, either remotely or through collaborations, all the reefs that are targeted by specialist mesophotic research biologists or specialists, they occur on really nice drop-offs. So, you're looking at either continental shelf drop-offs or atolls, and you have these really nice vertical walls that just plunge down to 200 meters, and you see this really nice change. But other times you get really, really long sloping gradients. I would probably say that the biggest difference in species assemblage occurs with the kind of habitat community. With really gentle, long drop-offs, you kind of tend to get more rhodolith beds or helimeter algae patches. And the type of fishes that live in these areas differ quite significantly, actually, from those that live on really deep vertical drop-offs. With the latter, you tend to get lots of oceanic currents. And so you get a lot of very clear water. You get lots of different serranid diversities. Whereas in the really gentle open beds, you tend to get more wrasses. Yeah, but that's the exciting thing, right? Because we don't really know a lot about mesophotic habitat. So every time we encounter one, it's a whole new surprise for us. And the amount of time that we spend down there as well is quite limited if you're diving, for example. And so we're mostly limited to observing these habitats with ROVs or BRUVs. Those two have their limitations. If you're a tiny little fish living in a reef, you probably want to run away if you see a giant...
a predator-shaped thing?
Yeah, with 50,000 watts of light just blaring at you.
Let's talk a little bit about the methodology, because that's something that's really fascinated me. And it's weird, it makes me anxious. Like, I can't do computer game levels with a time limit. It just stresses me out. If people are collecting on rebreathers, if they are diving, they are getting just like, what is it, like a 9-hour dive with 15 minutes on the bottom? Something like that?
Yeah, so it really depends on how long their bottom time is, I think. Like I said, I don't want to speak too much for the actual people that do these dives. And so I would just kind of maybe give it an example of what the divers were doing on my last Mesophotic expedition in the Coral Sea. So again, I want to reiterate, I don't do any of these dives. I'm not technically trained to do a closed circuit rebreathers. It needs a lot, you need a lot of skill and discipline, and I don't have that yet. And so I work a lot with people that do. So on my last expedition to the Coral Sea, I had Dr. Louise Rocha, who's the curator of fishes at the California Academy of Sciences, and he's done lots of pioneering work with closed circuit rebreathers. And so he was part of a team of 4 divers that were diving and collecting fishes for us on our trip. And so they kind of, I think, limited themselves to 8 or 9 minutes of bottom time, no more, which, would result in anywhere between 4 to 5 hours, I think, total time of diving, which then increases exponentially the longer you spend at the bottom. So if you look at their dive profiles, it's a pretty quick drop to 100 meters or, wherever they want to be. And they'll spend a little bit of time there. And then the rest of the 4 hours would just be decompression. And they spend a lot of time actually in the shallower bits. So they do like an ascent to 60 or 70. They spend a bit of time there. But if you look at their dive profiles, it's about 2/3 of it is spent above 20 meters, which is why, a lot of times when we're picking the dive sites, they prefer picking areas with really sharp drop-offs so they can follow the reef wall up and look at other things and photograph fishes or study kind of the shallow water compositions on the way up. Whereas if you were to dive in a Mesophotic community that's characterized by really, really long, gentle slopes, you might have to do 5 hours of blue water decompression, which is not fun.
I get bored at 5-minute deco stops and blue water.
Yeah. So, so the Coral Sea was great because the water was so clear. You could actually see them down to 70 meters. To kind of answer your initial question, the methodology. Yeah, so, there's an element of actually going down, collecting in the field. We're looking at museum specimens, we're collating video and photographic data from ROVs and BRAVs. And then, we're getting bycatch from long line fishing, aquarium fish collectors, which is a whole other kind of worms. So we're just kind of pulling together whatever we can because, as you know, Mesophotic ecosystems are not easy to study.
Talking about the stress of having that short period of time at the bottom, like how do they do it? Like I'm fairly good. Both me and you have a little bit of history in the sort of aquarium trade, and I'm quite good at outthinking a fish and the different swimming styles and how to catch different ones. But not with 9 minutes, not a day's work rendering down into 9 minutes of fish catching.
Yeah. So I've tried to catch fish out of my aquariums before, naughty ones, and doing it in the confined space is hard enough. Doing it in the wild with 9 minutes and the pressure of everything around you happening, and no shade to everyone else, but I think Tim Bennett and Brian Green, I reckon, are the 2 best fish collectors I know. And so I spoke to Brian at IPFC recently. And Brian and I, we've known each other for a long time. He's affiliated with the University of Hawaii, and he did a lot of his early forays into Mesophotic diving with like literally Jack Randall and Richard Pyle. So, he's one of the deep water fish gods of the world. And then I work quite closely with a mate of mine from Cairns. He's a commercial fish collector. His name is Tim Bennett. I reckon Brian and Tim are quite close in terms of prowess to collect fishes. And on our trip, Tim collected close to 16 individual specimens within an 8-minute window at 140 meters. So that's basically 2 fish a minute. I have a video of it. I'll send it to you after this podcast, and you feel free to put it in. But it basically shows him collecting a species of bromis that we're trying to figure out if it's new or not. He was telling me after the trip, if you have to chase them, it's over. You have to somehow get them to swim into your net. If you try and catch one and they swim away, just take it on the chin, cut your losses, and go for the next thing. I don't know how. Honestly, they are just so impressive.
Well, I did want to touch on the sort of commercial aquarium trade because you've got quite a lot of history there. You're a really keen fish keeper. You were actually quite involved in tying science and aquarist hobbies together, and you did a lot of writing. And what was your pseudonym at the time? Because there's lots of articles out there.
Oh, yeah, Lemon was my pseudonym. This is a part of my life that I've not thought about in a long time. I had a very unconventional and non-linear career path. I didn't finish university and go into science immediately. I kind of did a stint where I did a lot of aquarium magazine and blogging writing. As you said, I was a really, really avid fish keeper when I was in my teenage years. And I spent a lot of my time on forums, and I got approached by a friend of mine who asked if I wanted to write for him. And back then he was the editor-in-chief of this blog magazine called Reef Builders. And I said yes. I spent years of my life just writing about everything I wanted to know about the aquarium trade and fishes. Who's keeping what? Who's collecting what are the latest equipment available to keep your tank alive? What are the Japanese buying? What are the Americans buying? What's the latest rare fish in town? And it was such a crazy world because it's not so much now, because I think, just the way the hobby and industry has changed. But back then it was this real melting pot between science and like academia and hobby. I remember going to a lot of trade shows and aquarium fish conferences. Actually, I met Dr. Luis Rocha for the first time at one of these conferences, MACNA, the Marine Aquarium Conference of North America. It was a conference in Denver, and I met him for the first time there. I was so starstruck. I was not even in school yet. I was just a boy writing about fishes, and then here comes Luis Rocha, and I just had a fangirl moment. I'm like, oh my God, you're the guy that's, describing all these things, and you're collecting deep and blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of things that people say about the aquarium trade, and some of it comes with merit and some others are a bit of a misconception. But, you can buy species that haven't been described yet, completely brand new species that just enter the aquarium trade, misidentified as something else that it, kind of resembles vaguely. And I guess it's, it harps back on the importance of taxonomy and why it is important to name and catalog species and actually do the descriptions properly so that, we know what's down there, we know what's, being collected and taken out from our reefs. But it just goes to show the kind of stuff that you're able to find in the aquarium trade. And that was just kind of how I got started with my love for fishes. Now that I'm on the other side of things, doing research from an academic perspective, I still see a lot of value in the aquarium trade, mostly in educating aquarists about where their fishes are coming from, what's being taken out of the reefs, because a lot, like I said, and it still happens today, like a lot of species that are taken out of the reefs, they're not properly identified. And so, you're collecting things that are brand new to science when they get collected and sold. And sometimes when they die, it's about making sure that these specimens don't get flushed down the toilet. They get put in the freezer and, they get sent to a museum. And so we can do something about it. So there's this whole world that's out there that I used to be a part of. And admittedly, I don't really do a lot of that now, but I still think about it sometimes.
There's a bit of classical training and there's a bit of rigor involved, but there's no bar to entry. And I'm fascinated by the quality of like pseudo taxonomy, like the L numbers, the loricarid catfish, the spoon-tooth catfish. It's not the binomial names, but that is such thorough and accurate species description. You can buy whole catalogs and nothing has a scientific name. It's all L numbers.
I wasn't actually planning on like touching freshwater because it is a whole other like world on its own. But like, if you want to talk about new species entering the trade, literally everything from the Amazon is, yeah, you're right. There's so many undescribed species of loricarid catfish that it's all just L numbers now. There's a lot of negative connotation to this, and I don't intend it to be that way, but armchair taxonomists out there, and they know their stuff, man. Like a lot of them know because they see them in real life and they actually have exposure to specimens. If you're working in an aquarium and you see hundreds of these fishes come in every day, chances are you're seeing more of these specimens in life than some of the taxonomists that work in museums. I can tell you with 100% confidence that a lot of authorities out there have never seen the species that they work on alive. And so like, a lot of these people have perspectives that we don't have. So coming in from the aquarium trade and now transitioning into doing this from an academic point of view, there's so much that I've learned from just being an aquarist and being someone who's obsessed with going to the fish store every week. I used to go to every single trade show and every single pet show and every single aquarium conferences all over the world just to look at fish. And I still have my tentacles in every single one of these pies. Like I said, I'm not really active in the whole industry and hobby scene anymore, but I keep my finger on the pulses because you see like really amazing thing come into the trade and you're like, that is, even if it's not a new species, that could be a specimen that's really, really valuable to museum collections. Something that might be a common aquarium fish to you might be really rare in our collections. And even just getting tissue samples is really hard. I'm very happy with where I'm at the moment, having my 10 years of being an aquarium fish nerd and now being a fish taxonomy nerd and seeing the two worlds meld together. Those were some of the best years of my life, I think.
It draws a parallel to me that we get indigenous knowledge and it's the same thing. Why on earth would you not listen to the people who've been looking at this stuff for so long? Why would you close your mind to that knowledge?
Yeah.
They've seen a lot more than you. They've been here a lot longer than you.
Yeah.
Be open that there's going to be data in there that's really valuable to you.
Oh, absolutely. I've learned through personal experience to never say no to the stray Instagram DM from that 16-year-old kid that's like, I bought this in my fish store today. I think it's this species. I'm like, I want to hear all about it. Show me all the photos. Tell me about it. My DMs are open. Send me fish photos. I love it. If you're a kid out there who's just really into fishes, like, good on you.
You're in good company. There's been a few of us who've made a career out of it.
Oh, yeah.
And to link it back around, these aquarium traders now have an interest because rarity, because there are real like high roller collectors who want the thing that no one else has or want to figure out the husbandry of something no one else has been able to keep.
You have your really hardcore collectors that just want to own a fish that has never been collected before. I don't know if you know what a peppermint angelfish is. A seriously almost unbelievably beautiful angelfish with white and red alternating bars. It looks like a barbershop pole. It's found only in French Polynesia in reefs deeper than 70 meters, commonly around 100 meters. And because they lived only in areas where you have to kind of enter the Mesophotic realm with rebreather diving, a lot of these aquarium collectors just kind of went into that realm of being deep water fish collectors. So one of my friends in Cairns, he works for an aquarium export company called Cairns Marine. So he does a lot of collecting commercially for the hobby. And he's one of the few aquarium collectors that are doing it deep. So he does deep rebreather fish collecting. I've known him for a long time. And when I was putting together my team for my Mesophotic trip, I asked if he wanted to come along and collect for me, but for science.
But I know Mbari did a really nice exhibit recently of some deeper things that haven't been kept before, some snailfish and things. Obviously, you've got to almost decompress the fish as well.
Mbari and the Okinawa Churami aquariums, I think I might be wrong here, but they're one of the few, I was going to say the only two, but they're one of the few public aquariums in the world that actually display deep water fishes. And they do it by putting them in a decompression chamber of the collection and kind of slowly adjusting the pressure over a long period of time to get them acclimated. For a lot of these deep water aquarium fish collectors, for the hobby, I mean, they don't have a industrial size hyperbaric chamber, but a friend of mine who was part of Louise Rocha's team built a DIY decompression chamber out of aquarium parts, acrylic parts, and a pressurizer. And it's amazing. They published a paper on it.
Oh, can you send a link?
Yeah, I'll send you the link.
Yeah, that'll be in the show notes.
And basically, you collect the fishes at depth in situ, you put them in there, you keep the pressure the same all the way up to surface, and then you slowly kind of equilibrate the pressure. And I think they did a pretty good job because the California Academy of Sciences has the Steinhardt Aquarium where they started kind of exhibiting a subset of everything they collected from their Mesophotic trips. So they were displaying things like Tosinoides and Sakura and some of the other deep water Bodianus and species that you don't really get to see in the aquarium trade because they tend to die from barotrauma. But the proof of method and the proof of concept that those chambers worked was them kind of displaying a lot of those fishes in the Steinhardt Aquarium. And then the other way of doing it, obviously, is you collect them at depth and then you bleed them. You bleed the swim bladder with a hypodermic needle. You basically bring them up. So because you've already bled the gas in the bladder, it doesn't explode on the way up. And then it's a matter of kind of just letting them heal slowly. Obviously, the risk is a lot higher, but that's one way of doing it. Another way is just to bring them up really, really slowly over the span of days in a bucket and a pulley system. Some of the Japanese collectors, the long line collectors, they put a little pinhole camera at the end of their lures. You can see what they're catching and they reel it up. They don't want it, they leave it. If it's something that they want, they bring it up and then we put it in a chamber, and that's what Okinawa Churami Aquarium does. It's amazing. Honestly, some of the craziest days of my reef builder's career, you want to call it that, as a kid writing blogs and magazine pieces. I would go to Japan, Osaka, and meet a Japanese aquarist. So I was going to preface that. I'll send him an email first. I'm like, hey, I heard that you've recently been put in touch with this collector and you've bought this species and you're keeping it. Can I come and have a look at it? And it would just be a very unassuming dentist. I'll walk into his office and who have an aquarium at the back with mesophotic fishes, Balenoperca parli, Lipropoma latifasciatum, like all these amazing things that you only see. And I would call them book fishes because I would only have ever seen them in a book.
I like book fishes.
Yeah, they're book fishes. And I would go into his dental office and look at his tank and I'm like, you have this fish. Like, how do you have that on display? And it's like, oh yeah, paid this guy and he collected it for me. And then I'll just take pictures and it's incredible. The resources are incredible. Even if it's not just for specimens, it's just knowing what they look like in life. Their live coloration is just amazing. I want to tell you a story about probably my best encounter as a 19-year-old kid doing fish nerd things around the world and writing stories about rare fish. This book, do you know this book? Angelfishes of the World by Kiyoshi Endo. Angelfishes of the World is one of those really old reference books. There's lots of really nice pictures of rare angelfishes in here. And the cover, that's a peppermint angelfish. I went to this house in Japan. My friend took me there and he had a peppermint angelfish swimming in his tank. At that time, people were kind of already keeping peppermint angelfishes, so it wasn't like a shocking thing. I took a few photos of it and then I found out after that peppermint angelfish that was living in his tank was the same one on this book cover. And it was 21 years old.
That's a good aquarist.
As far as I'm aware, it's still alive today because I'm friends with him on Facebook now and I see him post photos of it now and then. The best part of this story is a few years later, I published a paper in Proceedings B, Royal Society Journal, on angelfish hybrids. The photo that I took of that very fish, it got selected as the cover for the journal issue.
We do wider reading in the show notes, so send us a link to the cover.
And then I just put it side by side. I'm like, this fish it's been alive for so long that it's been on the cover of an aquarium reference book and the cover of a Royal Society journal.
It's bookended your career. The fish is going to outlive us all.
As a fish nerd, I can't tell you how crazy that is to me.
It's your career path. Your career path as like a spirit animal. Oh, Kai, that was wonderful. That was so much fun. Thank you for coming on and having a chat with us.
No, absolutely. Thank you for having me. Had a lot of fun.
I don't want to be too fishy, though. I know I'm really guilty of that. So I did want to share the project of another friend of the show. You might remember Teresa Amaro from our Canyons episode. She has also been doing some extreme technical diving, and I got her to record a little bit about her project as well.
Hi, Tom. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's a great way to let people know about the project. So I'm leading this project already for almost 3 years. The name of the project is COAST, and it means Conservation of Marine Ecosystems around Santo Cabo Verde, implications for policy and society. The main objective is actually to recommend marine protected areas. But for that, and because this place was actually very near to science, we had to collect baseline data from all kinds of disciplines. Why I actually chose this place? It was because I went there as a diver, and then whenever I was diving there, I was like, wow, my God, this is like really, really beautiful. Because I kept on going as a diver. There was one time that the owner of the diving center asked me if I wanted to manage the diving center for 3 months. So I decided to do this. I left Portugal and I went to Cabo Verde in Africa. And whenever I was like diving, I had this idea, gosh, this is so beautiful, so unique. And people are so unique as well that we need to write a project to hear. Because I was always at sea, I talked a lot with fishermen. They complain about the reduction of fish in their catches. I decided whenever I went away to build a team, a very multidisciplinary team. We are collecting data from all kinds of disciplines. In terms of biology, I actually established a kind of a fisherman network around the island. With their help, I rent their boats and then we go diving. So I have maybe 20 stations where I have collected data. In the beginning of the project, we were going to only go to 20 meters, but then we found these black coral forests. And so I went down. But because these black coral forests were so unique, so beautiful, we start also measuring them. I had also to change my way of diving. So I'm using a rebreather. So during COVID, I went to do a course, and it's fantastic because I can stay much longer in the water, deeper to these black coral forests, and actually get more data. Of course, I'm aware that we can have drop cams, for instance, and brevs to access also these diversity data. But this project didn't have actually that much money. It was actually much better to be the ROV. For these deeper data, I have 2 divers with me. They are not scientists, so they are only technical divers. And it's quite funny that by now they know how to measure corals. It's really funny. Also, it's important for this project, I only work with the locals. So all the money that I have goes to the locals. So I have these fishermen, I rent their boats. I also learn a lot with them because they know much more than I do. I spend my life studying and they spend their life at sea, and they know much more actually than I do. So I'm learning a lot. So at this point, we are already in the phase of publishing our results. We already know, according to the data, which area we actually would like to recommend to be a marine protected area. This cannot be done just by me. I organized a workshop together with Christina Pitta. one of the researchers at the University of Aveiro. She does economics. And so she went through the islands. She did a lot of interviews. And together we organized a workshop with the mayor and with the institute of the government, from the NGOs, and also from the fishermen, with the fishermen. And then together we wanted to recommend an area that should be protected. And the good thing is that scientifically saying, I would recommend a certain area of the island, and this is actually in accordance with what the fishermen want. So it's actually really nice. So this was the first workshop in 2024, and now we are going back there in October, and we have much more data as well. I just got this paper published with black corals and gorgonians, and now I'm gonna have the pleasure to have the Minister of the Sea as well, and we are trying now to go a little bit beyond of only recommending. Let's see if it works. Also, I think by working, with the fishermen, but also interacting a lot with the other stakeholders, I was just invited to participate on a meeting with the Republic President of Cabo Verde in October, where we're going to discuss the ocean in Cabo Verde. More news to come. Bye-bye, and thank you once again.
And that was a pressurized version of one of our longer podcast episodes. If you enjoyed that and you would like to hear the full-length episode, just match the episode numbers and you'll be able to find the full-length version in the feed. Thanks for listening. We'll deep see you next time, and I abyss you already.